The government can steal from you in ways that make them popular. Quantitative easing, which is to say printing more currency unbacked by anything, devalues the currency that you already have in your bank account. That's theft. When governments do it, they're popular. When government increases taxes on some, that's often very popular with the people that they didn't increase taxes on. It's a form of theft that gets them elected. When governments run big deficits like they are today, which is in effect stealing from the unborn or young people, that's popular with the people who are current beneficiaries of that. If you look at Social Security, Dunnigan, our generation, voted itself all kinds of cool benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Yes, we paid into them, but not to the extent that we're going to draw out of them. So the $100 trillion in unfunded, net present value of unfunded liabilities, the benefits that we will generate being paid for by younger people is theft. And 80% of the American population think that theft is more than justified. Given the fact that the government has all these ways to steal from us that are extremely popular, why would they engage in overt theft, which would be unpopular?
Did you know that the US national debt has skyrocketed to over $30 trillion, putting immense pressure on our economy? Financial expert Rick Rule warns that while the likelihood of outright government confiscation of your assets is low, the reality is far more sinister. Through methods like quantitative easing and increased taxation, the government is effectively stealing your wealth right under your nose. By printing more money and running massive deficits, the value of your savings is eroded and future generations are burdened with debt. Rule points out that these hidden tactics are not just theoretical concerns, but are actively happening, eroding the purchasing power of your hard-earned money. Imagine waking up to find that the value of your savings has plummeted overnight, not because of market forces, but due to government policies. Rule emphasizes that quantitative easing is a form of theft, where the government prints more currency unbacked by anything, devaluing the money you already have. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario, it's the current economic reality. As the government continues to run large deficits and increase taxes on select groups, it's a form of stealthy wealth confiscation that goes unnoticed by many.
My experience has been that when gold establishes the momentum in precious metals, and then the generalist investor comes in, that the generalist investor is encouraged by the momentum in gold and buys the asset with lower unit costs and more volatility, which is to say silver. This usually occurs about midway through a bull market. No reason why history has to repeat itself there. But when silver assumes leadership from gold, it moves further and it moves faster. I know that the gentleman would like me to give him a date. I'm too old and smart for that. I would just suggest to him that we're in the early innings of a precious metals bull market, and he needs to be patient for gold to establish a dominant trend before silver really gives fireworks to the upside. It's worth waiting for, by the way, Dunnigan. Your younger audience won't be familiar with the dynamics of a silver bull market. The first one, of course, that I lived through was the 1970s, where silver went from about $1 to $50. That's not representative, I think. A better market to pay attention to was the early 2000s market, from about $5 to about $50, a tenfold move in silver. Too many silver bugs these days have low expectations. High expectations in terms of time, but low expectation in terms of dimension. I read all kinds of stuff on the internet about the fact that silver might go to $35. I could care less about a $5 move in silver. I've experienced a couple tenfold moves and one 50-fold move. So a $5 move is of no particular interest to me. The nationalization is almost always a sign of a market top. I looked at, as an example, Zambia nationalizing the copper mine. The copper mines, boy, did they top tick the copper price. What happens with bull markets is when they begin to move, they move so fast that they outpace even the greed and incompetence of elected politicians and bureaucrats. So from the time that they decide that stealing private wealth is a good thing until the time when they accomplish it, characteristically 3 to 5 years passes. So while I understand that having a good asset stolen is a bad thing, having a good asset stolen at or near the top of the market is not as bad as it might sound. But in answer to the question, if the gold price, as an example, were to move from its current $2,300 to some number like $10,000, which I don't think is outlandish, the probability that the African National Congress in South Africa would steal the gold mines and then proceed to plunder them, like they did the coal mines or Eskom, I think the probability of that is 100%. Well, first of all, the probability of a gold-backed currency is nil. A gold-backed currency imposes discipline on politicians with regards to their fiscal measures, and politicians live for power, not constraints. So I think the probability that you see a gold-backed currency anywhere in the world, with the possible exception of Liechtenstein, is nil. If you look at the amount of gold in Fort Knox and you look at the amount of money in circulation in the United States, you would need a gold price that was almost unfathomable to current holders to back the currency. But as I say, this is a fantasy. People who subject themselves to the indignity of being politicians are people with an unquenchable thirst for power. And a gold-backed currency would impose a discipline on them, which is unthinkable to them. Silver is always a byproduct of copper production. And so the amount of revenue available from a silver stream relative to copper production means that it's not in the company's interest to do that. In fact, what tends to happen is sort of the other way around, albeit not involving governments. What often happens is a copper producer with byproduct silver pre-sells the silver production to a streamer in return for a disproportionate share of the capital cost of putting the mine in production. The governments are much more inclined to steal than to trade. So what I think you'll see in the case of the copper business is de facto nationalization. Rather than stealing the mine outright, you will see them increase the requirement for offsite capital contributions, like building schools, roads, and water systems, increasing taxation, increasing duties, and increasing royalties. Stealing the output very much like the U.S. government stole the oil and gas industry's output with excess profits taxes. The ratio, which is to say 16 to 1, matters because it doesn't take into account utility. Prices move really as a function of utility. Silver has two utilities. One, which is highly speculative as a medium of exchange and a store of value, which is to say its investment characteristics. The other is its industrial utility, its use as a germicide and its use as a reflectant in solar applications. So while I understand the first part of the question, I think the attention that silver adherents pay to the 16 to 1 relationship between the relative abundance of gold and silver in the Earth's crust is probably less important than the social roles that they've both played in terms of investment demand or the industrial roles that they both enjoy. The discussion about reversion to mean referred to the fact that the market share of all precious metals related investments, including physical precious metals equities, and public precious metals debt, comprises less than 0.5% of the value of all savings and investment assets in the United States. That's important, first of all, because the number is so small, but secondly, too, because the 4-decade mean market share of precious metals and precious metals related assets was 2%. So if you had reversion to mean, which I believe you will, that means that the demand for this asset class grows fourfold in the largest savings and investment market in the world. I think that's a broad enough asset class and a broad enough competitive universe that reversion to mean is an important statistical tool. To the extent that you want to use reversion to mean in something more volatile or more constrained, seems to me problematic. I think, I wouldn't put any dastardly deed past the U.S. government, but I think the probability of it is low. People have asked me my whole life about the possibility of government confiscations of IRAs, too. The government can steal from you in ways that make them popular. Quantitative easing, which is to say printing more currency unbacked by anything, devalues the currency that you already have in your bank account. That's theft. When governments do it, they're popular. When government increases taxes on some, that's often very popular with the people that they didn't increase taxes on. It's a form of theft that gets them elected. When governments run big deficits like they are today, which is in effect stealing from the unborn or young people, that's popular with the people who are current beneficiaries of that. If you look at Social Security, Dunnigan, our generation, voted itself all kinds of cool benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Yes, we paid into them, but not to the extent that we're going to draw out of them. So the $100 trillion in unfunded, net present value of unfunded liabilities, the benefits that we will generate being paid for by younger people is theft. And 80% of the American population think that theft is more than justified. Given the fact that the government has all these ways to steal from us that are extremely popular, why would they engage in overt theft, which would be unpopular? I was reminded by a congressman, and I won't name him, that Congress is aware of the fact that there are 400 million guns in circulation in the United States. Think of yourself as a congressman. You run the risk, you run the ire of all the gold bugs, many of whom are armed, which is a risk, or you steal from the unborn, which makes you popular, gets you reelected time after time after time. Would you prefer to be loved for being a thief, or would you prefer to be shot for being a thief?